peace because that's the most important.
Again, I think that when we're talking about shalom, we're not necessarily talking about peace, the way we understand it. But I think what we're looking for is something on an essential level, that there should not be a friction. There should not be a tension between what should be and what is. Some would say we're not going to see that till Mashiach's time, which is very possible. But we're not talking about just making peace between people. We're talking about pursuing peace, trying to repair things interpersonally, universally, physically, spiritually, and we can override truth for the sake of peace. It's something that's on a higher value, because truth exists. Truth sometimes, in an instance where there is, when we have to overcome what's false, that will allow us to get to more of an ultimate truth. In addition, sometimes setting aside truth reveals that even with dishonesty, that's what's necessary. Sometimes you have to, they talk about in Kabbalistic terms, Yerida l'tzorech aliyah. Sometimes you have to go down in order to go up. Okay, so sometimes you have to bend the truth in order to create something better.
New Tanya, you have to have your heart broken.
Okay, they do. It's based on the book of Proverbs. Sheva yipol tzaddik v'kam. This righteous one falls 7 times before getting up.
It's such a slippery slope.
Of course it is. That's why you have to have strong shoes, right?
Because you would presuppose that
That's why Jews don't believe in high heels. Yeah.
It's so subjective.
Well, but the thing is, it's not subjective. There are guidelines, and the question, it is slippery because if you stray from those guidelines, then you will go tumbling down the mountain.
Yeah, but these guidelines are, even though they're guidelines and they can say they're solid and they're boundary, it's subjective in terms of how the person is going to interpret them within their own life.
Well, but I think if you start thinking back to some of the things that we saw, these guidelines do provide us with some guidance when it comes to telling the truth or not telling the truth. Sometimes where we absolutely have to tell a lie to tell the truth. I think that there's certainly a great deal of subjectivity, and it opens us up to a slippery slope. But that's where all the good stuff will lie if we're able to overcome. It shouldn't necessarily be easy. Who says it should be easy?
It also presupposes that there's a healthy individual that's
Correct.
engaging with this. I mean,
why shouldn't there be healthy individuals engaging with this the right way?
Because oftentimes they're...
Okay, so you basically hit upon why, in my opinion, you have segments of our community which build walls around themselves to act in a certain way, and you have those who open themselves up. And those who have built up the walls can point their finger at those of us who have opened up ourselves and say, look at you guys, you're falling off the cliff. And those of us, we look at them and say, what the heck are you doing? What's happening in those communities? We're busy pointing fingers at each other. Yeah. Why? Where does the truth lie in these cases? It will depend on your perspective.
Well, is it perspective or is it having an overall sense, like these are about individual situations and how we can be guided through our life and the individual circumstances?
Right.
But there's still the overall truth is
Truth is out
Hashem's
there.
goodness.
Correct.
So, I should be able to discern the difference between if I'm trying to motivate somebody, and so maybe I need to be very direct with them because I want them to be good at something, or I'm sitting in someone's home on Shabbos and I should know what to say because of that situation.
Certain situations are very black and white, right? No murdering, right? No kindling flames on the Sabbath. Certain things are more black and white, but I think Judy is correct, right? It is a very slippery slope, and it leads to embracing certain lifestyle choices and certain directions and certain religious philosophies are motivated by this very slippery slope.
Yeah, there are several things in Judaism that you're allowed to bring on Shabbos, for example.
Right.
You're going to save a life.
Right.
I'm surprised that here, with honesty and lying, that the first thing wouldn't have been to save a life.
Right. Well, I think it sort of goes without saying. I think you're right. So saving a life stands out as everything except the 3 cardinal sins. The idea of certainly that's the real problem that we have with Khan. Khan's ready to kill someone basically because to maintain honesty and integrity. I think that it's also interesting that some of the more blatant or direct concepts within Judaism, no one will disagree about. There's only one God. You never had groups of Jews eliminate the one God thing. Where do you get more complicated? You don't have Jews who have any sort of acceptance of Jewish law. None of them say you take the meat, you put it with the milk, and you eat it. Right? Jews who don't accept halacha, Jewish law, will say it doesn't matter. But anyone who connects with Jewish law, no Jews connected to the basic legal system will completely turn on its head any of the obligations. But once you start getting down to some of the more minutiae, that's where things start to break down, and that I think is where you are coming up with this. How to analyze when to tell the truth is one of those examples. It doesn't have what we call in Talmudic speak a nafka mina. It doesn't have a practical application, but it has very much an ethical application. That's what it's in the course called Living with Integrity, and it also has a certain philosophical or sociological application. Slippery slope, absolutely. But what do you do with a slippery slope becomes the question. And I think that the Talmud gives numerous examples of direct lies. That doesn't mean it's a good thing to lie.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's so complicated. On the one hand, justice is such a cornerstone of being Jewish, and it's one of Hashem's greatest values and virtues, and yet this seems to intersect with that.
Well, I think quite correct. Well, we've spoken before. The idea of justice versus justice and truth and peace and all these things are sometimes competing values. What about? Let's look at some exceptions, some limits to speaking untruths, even when it might be a good idea to lie. Look at text number 22. Rav was constantly bothered by his wife. Never happened before, but I guess Rav did. If you asked her to prepare lentils, she would prepare small peas. If you asked her to prepare small peas, she would prepare lentils. When his son Chia grew older, he relayed his father's request to his mother in the reverse order. So if his father wanted peas, he told his mother, Dad wants lentils. Your mother, Rav once marked to Chia, has improved. Said Chia, it was I who reversed your request to her. Rav said, regarding such matters, people say, your offspring teach you reason. However, you should not continue to do so, for it is said, they train their tongue to speak falsehood, to be iniquitous, etc. So, based on some of what we have seen, should Chia have been allowed to lie to his mother?
Yes.
Why?
Well, because it's for the good, the greater good. It's sort of for the peace.
Creating shalom bayit.
Right.
Okay. Anyone say otherwise?
He's dealing with a crazy person, trying to make it fit into society.
Okay.
So at what age can a child have knowledge enough and judgment enough to be able to tell a lie and be okay by doing so?
Well, I don't think there's an answer to that question, but the very question highlights why it could be dangerous to tell lies. Because then, correct, you go down that slippery slope. And as opposed to creating that's why Judaism does not take the utilitarian approach. And it doesn't take the Kantian approach. It sort of occupies that small, narrow space between the two. So I think that also, I think that one thing that Rob is highlighting is don't do this if you're going to get caught doing it. Right? Don't lie if you're going to get caught lying. Because as you saw his son getting, he was able to figure out that his son was lying. That's probably a bad way to lie, even for the sake of peace. If you're going to tell the person how delicious the dinner is, and then get caught throwing it in the garbage. So it's like the Seinfeld episode with the mutton. You don't see that one? The mutton? Yeah, so he basically, his girlfriend who keeps serving him meat, and he decides he doesn't like meat. So she serves him all this meat, and he takes the meat and puts it into the napkins, and puts the napkins into the pocket of his coat. And of course, it all comes to light, and he gets caught. All right, so if you're going to get caught, be very careful. It could be something else here. Remember, there's always going to be consequences, even if you have the best of intentions. So let's go back to our case studies. right? Just to sort of recap where we are so far. Obviously, the goal is a world that has shalom, a world that has peace between people in general, between heaven and earth, a world where the truth, with a capital T, will emerge even if certain details need to be changed. But it's permitted to bend the truth to maintain peace between yourself and another, to promote peace between other people, the Aaron scenario, prevent another from suffering shame, to prevent yourself from suffering shame, right, the rabbi example, maintain the private nature of intimate matters, to shield another from financial harm. So you see in the learning exercise 3 on page 217, it goes through all of the recaps the scenarios. So let's take a look. Or to safeguard your finances against evil. So let's look at the examples. You're uncomfortable sharing your age with strangers. May you lie about your age.
Yes.
No.
You disagree? Well, because you're probably younger. So why? So if you those,
Self-shame.
huh?
To avoid self-shame.
Okay. If you self-shame, why do you say no?
Well, I was thinking in terms of shame, I thought it was to avoid shame for other people.
Okay, but it could also to avoid shaming yourself. Remember, I can lie about what tractate I'm learning, so that you don't ask me questions I don't know the answers.
I thought that was just for learning.
So no, but I think so. I think that the principles are there. We can, if a rabbi, it seems that the principle is there. Maybe it can apply to others. So it's a good point. Maybe you have to be more specific. Maybe you only have the precedents of those exact scenarios to rely upon. Yeah.
About the rabbi lying, so he won't be ashamed, I actually disagree with that because.
Well, you're wrong.
That's good. By the way, have you considered writing sort of a study of the Torah by way of Seinfeld?
Yeah, it's on my to-do list.
Okay, but anyway.
There was this guy, Rabbi Seinfeld. I think he works for Aisha Torah or something. He's got a great name. But yeah.
I was serious, but
All
anyway.
right, so yeah.
Okay, so this guy, he's supposed to be a big Leonard guy, and he doesn't know something too well. It's good to show students you don't have to be perfect.
Okay.
You
You
know,
know.
that, hey, even I'm learning. I don't know everything.
Sometimes that works.
Yeah,
Right.
okay, and if they get arrogant and snooty about
You know,
it.
then there's the time that the story they tell in Eastern Europe of the rabbi who they wanted to fire because he was up late studying Torah, and they're like, if the rabbi still has to study, then who needs him? So you got to be careful. All right. So may you lie about your age? Yes, maybe not if it doesn't fit into the specific example as mentioned in the Talmud. All right. Doctors inform David his aunt is dying. He feels that sharing this information with her will distress her further. Should he lie to her?
Yeah, depends.
None of this depends stuff. Give me an answer. Yes or no?
Yes. No,
Is it allowed? How about this? Allowed, forbidden, obligated.
Obligated.
Okay.
But the thing is, if he doesn't know what his aunt really
Okay.
is, it depends how well he knows what
Okay,
his
so
aunt is, right?
let's take it as a given that all these things have sort of the maybe and the slippery slope. So, in general, does anyone think it's forbidden for him to tell his aunt?
No, it's not forbidden.
Okay. Or is it forbidden for him to lie to his aunt?
No.
I wouldn't say that was true.
Okay. So,
It's
permissible, not necessarily obligated. Okay.
Bias would be to tell the truth unless you
Yeah, but let her live out her final days in ignorant bliss.
Maybe she needs to take it very easy.
Well, yeah, a lot depends on, so if so let's say someone has a massive stroke. Oh, that's not a good example because then they can't decide for themselves. All right, this subjectivity, but you're probably allowed to lie.
Yeah.
Okay. A friend of yours is happily married. His spouse asks if it's true that he got drunk on a recent business trip. Should you fudge the facts a bit?
Yeah.
I don't know.
say yes, your husband.
Huh?
We always have to look at the consequences.
Yeah.
Okay, so look at the consequences.
The consequences.
So, okay, so Herschel was drunk last night.
Yeah.
So, should I tell you that? What are the
It's okay.
What are the consequences? You're going to go home and get angry at him and start a fight. Who knows what happens?
Well, it depends. Like,
Or maybe you just don't care. I don't know that though.
it depends if he has a drinking problem.
You think too much. You think
Isn't this an intimacy issue? Because really,
Okay.
it shouldn't, even if this is a good friend, let's say, which doesn't say there necessarily, but does it, isn't this supposed to be between the spouses? I mean, why is his spouse going to his friend when maybe it's a conversation she should be having? with
Okay,
her
why
husband?
not?
Okay, but
So you don't have to lie and say. Why don't you just say ask him?
But what
Yeah,
happens
mind
if
your
I
business.
asked you,
Okay.
did he in fact drink last night?
Okay, so now you ask me, did he drink last night?
Right.
How do I-
So
how
should
do I-
you
what do I
lie?
lie?
Should I lie?
Should you not?
Should I lie? I'm asking you that. That's what I want to know.
It depends how good friends you are.
Depends. No, depends. No, depends.
Depends whether you think we'll get it.
Should I lie or shouldn't I lie?
Yes.
You'll be a liar.
So now, do I have to lie?
Yes,
No.
shalom bayit.
Ah,
Unless you think that there is material harm.
but I want to keep the peace.
You can
Unless-
tell your friend,
Between
you
the,
can tell your wife.
between, but if you're busted, if the
Unless-
truth comes out,
You're
then you're
allowed
held
to not
accountable
answer.
for your lying. So
Right.
is it the peace between the husband and the wife?
So I should tell the truth?
Well, I don't know, it's not clear, is it self-preservation?
more information.
Where you?
No.
It's not that
Where's the
difficult.
priority? Is
Ah.
it self-preservation
So I-
or is it?
okay,
I'll get someone
okay,
else?
the
You're not
valid
bound to
point.
answer every question and
Right.
ask you.
I think that there's certainly here, the implication, the scenario would seem to be, if I tell you that he's drinking, you're not gonna give him a kiss on the cheek when he gets home. Right, so the query is made in an accusatory way.
According to what we just.
According to what
learned,
we've
sounds like
seen.
It's okay.
It sounds like, well, I think you keep making an argument that you have to.
Yeah,
This is to keep the peace. Bakei shalom v'rod fehu. Go after it, even if you have to lie about it.
it's a probabilistic thing.
Okay,
I mean,
all right.
you're probably going to get him in trouble and ruin shalom bayit. So what is the probability of anything untoward happening to him just because you don't inform the spouse that he got drunk? There's probably zero probability.
I'm gonna go out drinking with you often. And
All right. Wait a minute, though. Are we done with the previous one about the dying aunt?
We're done with that one.
I would have said that was obligated.
You would have said obligated, okay.
I mean, how
Why?
could that not be obligated?
No,
I mean,
because
she's-
some people want to know the truth about what's going on with them. If some
That's-
people say, if I only have a
that's
few
it.
weeks to leave, tell
Okay,
me.
that's assuming an explicit request on her part. though. I
Okay,
mean,
let's say you don't have if you don't have the explicit request, you don't know one way or the other. You have to make that judgment yourself. That's slippery slope. Should you tell her not? What if you don't enjoy speaking with your mother-in-law and she calls you, and can you say to the person to say, just step down? Well, to keep the peace. So, you have to say the same principle that may cause you to say you definitely have to lie. Can you apply the same system to the husband out drinking that before?
You don't have to.
Are you saying that only because this is the mother-in-law, the other one's the husband? The same principles I think are at play. Bakei shalom, pursue peace. Doesn't have to be, but what we've seen I think supports that possibility.
Wait, what was the answer?
Here, I think you're certainly allowed to lie, and even more if you want to invoke this bakei shalom v'rod fehu, this idea of seeking peace, you may have to.
No, this confused the children totally.
Okay, no, okay, for sure, you're right. In a vacuum, we're looking. What about the larger issue? That's the reason why we can't be utilitarian. Oh no, and we can't. No, we can't even be just say flexible. Whenever it suits you, whenever it seems to work, lie, because there's a lot more at stake here, both in terms of pedagogically for children and religiously, spiritually. If we talk about the world being one that ultimately is one of MS and bringing out the truth, well, we recognize sometimes bending the truth is necessary, but you can't take that as a default. Bend the truth. What about making a surprise birthday for a friend? Can you lie to ensure that it stays a surprise?
Sure.
Why, sure.
Because
Yeah.
you're bringing them more pleasure.
Yeah, but no one ever said
What is the
no one
harm
says
of lying?
pleasure is a reason for lying. Peace is a pleasure is a reason
Let's
to
say they
lie.
hate parties and they hate his house.
Okay, so let's say the typical person who enjoys a party, otherwise we would have thrown it for them, and someone who knows what you like, wants to make a party for you, and is making a surprise, and you say, is it going to be? Are you taking me to a surprise party?
What's the problem?
No, the whole premise
You
of
can
the
bend
surprise party is lying to the person.
So maybe okay, but
It's
you're not
limited
lying.
light, it's gonna come out soon.
Right,
Well,
right.
Okay, I think what we've seen, I have a hard time finding a justification for lying in this case.
What?
I agree.
Because what's the justification? There's no peace here, unless maybe if the two of you collaborated so closely, and if the surprise is out, the two of you will never be friends again because each of you will blame the other for letting it out. Maybe that way, but all things equal, what? All things equal, what does it hurt for the guy that knows the surprise party? He can just act surprised anyway, then
Well,
everyone's
what
happy.
if it was
Well, I
disappointing
guess,
that he was
I'm off
surprised?
the.
Disappointment's not, it's not peace, it's not saving a relationship. All right, it's sort of, I feel like I'm gaining insights into the world in which we all live in.
Happiness is irrelevant, right?
It seems that for people here, happiness is very relevant, but it doesn't seem like Judaism has that
Really
same
cares.
premium on happiness. What about David's asked where he was in the summer of 1974? He doesn't want to reveal that he was incarcerated. May say that at the time he was studying at the Sorbonne.
UCLA maybe, not the school.
Okay, I think you're allowed.
Okay to lie.
Avoiding shaming
Well,
yourself.
I think it depends the situation. I mean, if you're
I said,
interviewing
whoa,
for
you
a
think
job-
it's the same as a surprise party?
And what if
No,
he
no,
gets
if
a
you're
job
interviewing
based
to be a
on that?
policeman, you better be telling them that you were in jail.
Well, look, it will depend. If someone, we're not talking about you're signing your name that I was never incarcerated. You're having a conversation. Everyone's saying, yeah, do you remember the summer of '74?
What if this is like the future wife?
Well, then you have to then gauge. Look, we talked about the issue how with regard to rechilut, right? The idea of speaking, just sharing information. On a first date, does it really matter if the person was divorced or not? So again, obviously, if we're all just shooting the breeze, summer '74, what were you doing? Well, I wasn't born yet, but what were you doing? I'm sure some other people here weren't born yet. You can lie. You can say I was, I spent time at the beach that summer.
It
Why do
seems
you
to
have
me you
to
should
lie?
lie.
Huh?
You don't have to lie.
You don't have to lie. You can say, oh, you got.
You say I was in Austin.
Okay, you could. Depends how it depends. Look, but you can imagine someone who would have this difficulty. This black stain on their record may not be so interested in
You
sharing.
can tell the truth without saying you were
Correct.
incarcerated.
Okay.
So
What
therefore,
if it's a
in
case
other words,
on
so-
a resume? Should you lie on your resume that you wouldn't?
You can't.
But again, it's not an issue of shame. There you have to proclaim, they're asking for factual information. You can't change factual information. If they ask another thing, were you ever incarcerated? You can't say,
I don't know.
Yeah, but what about?
if the conversation was, okay, who here was in jail? It may be more hard, are you in jail?
No, okay. What if though it's not about being incarcerated? Let's say that part was off, but someone just said they went to a certain school and everybody kind of be told, and it's something that would be shameful for them to then tell everyone the truth about themselves.
Oh, so you are allowed to change the truth in order not to shame yourself.
So what if it was like, so then it would be on a resume, because what if you are passing your resume along to people you know?
Resume is not, there's a difference between stating that this is factual and changing the truth. And you, like we said before, you
I
can.
think it's written as factual.
No, it's not written versus spoken. It depends what question is asked of you. Were you ever in jail? If that was even the question, if it was within a group setting where everyone's like, who would ever go to jail? That's disgusting.
Right.
It's very different than checking off no when you're demanding when a direct question is asked. And, like we said, it's a little subjective. There is a certain amount of slippery slope component. But if you're having a conversation, where were you in the summer of '74? You're allowed to mutar lishanot mipnei hashalom. You could change. You could say Asaning. You could say you could name the place. I was in San Francisco. You could say the location. But you're allowed to bend the truth in this type of scenario. What about? Dear friend asks you to help him move, but you're not really up to it. May you say that you have a pressing family engagement or work deadline?
Well, yeah, I
It's a
would
hard
say
one.
no, because you have an opportunity just to say, no, thank you.
Correct.
I'm good.
Right.
You have an opportunity to build trust by telling the truth.
Right. Or if you don't, you just don't want to, just say no.
Just be clean.
Say no. That's not a reason. Remember, it's about shame, it's about embarrassment, it's about financial loss. If you don't like, what you could say is if do you have something else? You could say yes, and then make sure you do have something else. So if at that moment you then decide to make an appointment, yes, at 3 p.m. on Sunday I'm going to be taking a nap. Can you help me move on Sunday at 3 p.m.? No, I'm busy. I'm busy taking a nap. But you can't. You get then obligated to take a nap, and if you didn't take a nap, you're lying and you just said. So this is when napping is a mitzvah. Should you lie to protect your child from a gruesome story?
Yes.
I think that this one is you're certainly allowed to. Why don't parents think the best of us are okay to lie about a salary, a new job, or about children's grades?
so everything is tricky also.
Well, that has to do with not overburdening someone potentially, right? Wasn't that one of them?
Okay,
You're protecting yourself.
okay,
You're
well,
protecting them from worry. You're protecting your parents.
okay, that's a nice way of
Worry.
looking at it. I don't want them to worry about me, so I tell them I'm making a lot of money.
That's like those people, like you hear those stories where people lost their job and they go to work every day, they pretend they're going to work. they're not
All
really.
right, you
Then
know,
they kill themselves.
but I think that you probably could dig into the sources, and you could dig into the sources and find rationale. I just think it's easier to say, I'm not going to tell you.
Right.
Mind your own business, mom and dad. How's the kid doing in school? Yes, no, issues maybe. I'm really not going to go into it. To me, that just sounds like a healthier response than lying about your salary.
Not if you've got a Jewish mother.
Okay, yeah.
Healthier, if something is wrong, they'll have family meeting.
So let's close by looking at text number 23. When God was about to create Adam, the ministering angels divided into different camps. Some said he should not be created, others said he should be created. Kindness said, let him be created, for he will be generous and kind. Truth said, do not create him, for he will be full of lies. Righteousness said, create him, for he will do charity and righteousness. Peace said, do not create him, for he is full of conflict. So God took truth, threw it on the ground, and then created man. The ministering angel said to God, Master of the universe, how can you denigrate your seal? Let truth rise from the earth. God accepted their words. Thus it says, truth will sprout from the earth. Absolute truth was not really helpful in creating us. Absolute truth is for the realm of the angels. But we don't live in an angelic world. We live in a human world. And our goal is to recognize that there's a time for absolute truth, but ultimately our goal is to bring out a more essential, more genuine truth. The divine truth is concealed in a world of falsehood. When we allow it to sprout, we transform into a world of truth, and not just emes, but also shalom, a world of peace. So, how'd you enjoy the class? See, I didn't know if it was maybe next week. Actually, we're not meeting next Monday. Our lesson 6 is 2 weeks from tonight.
Are you busy?
Yes, I will be in Washington, D.C. at the APEC Policy Conference.
2 weeks.
Yes, we'll meet again on the 11th to conclude the class.
Thanks for the compliment on the time.
They decided they don't sign
I didn't mean it.
I think it would be a really good thing. You could write a book. I'm serious. You told me you were looking for something else.
That's right.
You weren't busy enough. I mean, do you have any urge to write a book?
Actually, it's more like I don't feel like I have time.